Why was it that B.L. Umberger started a dairy farm at the Luberger Place?
I do not know why. I know it at some time or other. My dad, in order to keep the boys busy, they had a dairy and had a poultry farm at one time, and but we always had cattle, milk cows, cattle, pigs, chickens, all of that. Always had. The chickens just ran loose. And of course you'd cut your foot about every time you walked outdoors. We call it cut your foot when you stepped in the...
Oh, into the chicken poop?
Somebody said, now watch out there, you cut your foot.
Well, what kind of jobs, farm jobs, did the boys and the girls have on a home that had a dairy farm or had all those animals?
Well, we never did really run the farm ourselves. We always had tenants to really run the farms. But when the boys coming up, of course when it, you know, got the wheat thrashing time and time to cut the meadow, those things like that they did, you know. And anyway, it kept them busy. And we kids, we didn't really farm either, but we always had a huge garden. And of course that was a lot of work to keep that picked and everything. But any of us, if we wanted to make a little extra money, we could take care of a patch of cotton, or I remember King had the project of, I think a whole acre of strawberries one year, and you never saw so many so he put him up a little stand down at the highway and sold strawberries. Anybody that's come by, they stop, you know, and get strawberries. I remember one time the railroad track ran up in front of our house on the other side of the highway, and a train was stalled out there one time, and it was about almost even with King's stand where was the engine, and the engineer motioned for him to bring him some strawberries, so King took some strawberries over to the engineer.
Well, how did the dairy farm at Luberger Place tie into the founding of the Cabarrus Creamery?
Well, I don't really know. Back then, now we had what they call a separator in the milk room. It's an extra building that, but to sell that extra milk for money, they had to separate it and had the milk first. You probably had to get up 5 o'clock in the morning to do the milking, and that was bad because they maybe held 20 cows or something like that. They had the barn fixed so that we call them stanchions, that the cows came in and they put their neck there and they'd close it up so that they couldn't move, you know, get out while you milked them. And oh shoot, I forget what I was telling.
Well, we're going to get to the founding of the Cabarrus Creamery, so.
Well, anyway, we had those special 5-gallon and 10-gallon cans for the milk, and there was another family of the Burges in the dairy business at the same time. And so I think they got together to get some way to get all that milk every day early to Charlotte. And that's how the two got connected. Well, when we quit our dairy, the Burge family kept on with the milk business until it grew into ice cream company, and everybody knew about Cabarrus ice cream. It's very, very different. You go on, and they had a retail place where you could double park. I mean, park out there in front, and somebody come wait on you. You'd bring nickel a cone, and sometimes we call them double cones. But they had one particular brand of ice cream was lemon, and nobody made any like that. It had you'd find some seeds even in there, but a little bit of rind and the pulp of the lemon in it, and that was very good.
And that Caber's Creamery kept on
Until
even without. When did B.L. Umberger
oh,
sell out?
I don't know. I don't know about that. We never went into the retail part of it at all. Now that Caber's Creamery, it was really famous, but the Birds families were getting old and they didn't want to be in it anymore, so they broke our hearts when they sold it to somebody, and they sold it to somebody who didn't have any business sense at all. It just went from one thing to the other till finally bankrupt, and at this time the building has been empty for maybe 2 or 3 years, but I think they're working up something where they'll at least make that ice cream to sell somewhere else now. I'm not right sure about that.
How did Jennie Belle spend her day when you kids were growing up? You told me about doing the laundry stuff in the morning and then visiting in the afternoon.
Well, she had so much to do. In the summertime, all that canning, you know. It's hundreds of jars of stuff. For instance, everybody liked her pickles. It wasn't a strong pickle, it wasn't a weak pickle, it was kind of in between. But back then, for pickles, we'd even use half-gallon glass jars. And she'd can at least 50 of those every year, you know. We had a place in the cellar. Our cellar wasn't any cement, it was just dug out of red dirt and paths, and they had have a big water tank back under there, but they built shelves like steps to put all that canned stuff in what we call a cellar. That kept it a little cooler than anywhere else, and even and all that. But see, back there they didn't have the pressure cookers, so you still can corn and beans, which are non-acid or hard to save, but the corn got to be, not having the pressure cooker, got almost dangerous, and you had to be real careful when you opened it to be sure there wasn't anything the matter. I remember my mother telling about some friend of hers. She opened a can of a jar of corn, and she thought, well, it didn't look exactly right, so she didn't want to take a chance on it. So she poured it outdoors, and the chickens ran loose, and it killed the chickens. They gave the chickens what they called a limberneck back then.
Limberneck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did Jennie Belle spend her day?
Oh my goodness. Sewing. She had to do all the sewing. She had to do all the cooking. She had to do all the canning, all the tending to babies, one right after the other. Of course, as the last ones came along, the older ones did a lot of that work too, but they kept them busy too, you know. I remember we'd be kind of, put them kind of in pairs. Of course, now at that time, the boys did everything outdoors. The boys didn't do one thing in the house. That was against their religion. And the girls did everything in the house, and sewing and all that, you see. Mm-hmm. So that was their business, turned to whatever's out there. Of course, it got different as years went by, and from the time I got along, you know. But imagine sewing for 7 girls. I think I've said it before, but that takes a lot of time and patience. Well, she loved to sew, and she loved to make something good out. She might not have quite enough material to make a sew, but she'd end up with something nice out of that, you know. And I think King inherited that from my mother, because he can fix most anything and make something out of nothing, and when they tear down buildings, he saves part of them and take it home and make something nice out of it, you know.
Well, tell about how she arranged her day so she could visit.
Well, that was just kind of the method of doing things back then. You didn't go visiting in the morning. That's when people were busy, and so she did whatever had to be done most of the time. So that after dinner, well, you kind of cleaned up a little and dressed a little nice, and you'd go visit, or you'd have somebody in. Out in the country, you had to walk, you see, to visit your neighbors.
By after dinner, you mean after 12 noon meal?
Yeah, I said that wrong.
Can you tell some about wash day back when you were little?
Well, yeah, nobody had a washing machine by that time. But everything was done by hand, outdoors usually. We had what we called a wash house that kept the wood to make the fire under the wash pots. They boiled all white clothes back then. And inside there were shelves with, not shelves, but places to put the wash tubs. They were, you know, big and all. And they had them at the right level that you use a washboard, you know, and rub the clothes up and down in the soap. Well, of course, we had to all use homemade soap back then, especially for washing clothes. You made that during the hog killing time because you used the fat, the extra fat from the hog killing process to make soap with. My mother always made her own. You use Red Devil Lye some ways. They knew the formula back then. I wouldn't know it now. But anyway, you cooked it in outdoors in those wash pots, and then when you got it all made and it got cold in the pot, you cut it in the chunks size that you'd be using when you wash your clothes. And let's see, from then on, well anyway, you washed everything. I don't remember, sometimes, I don't believe we had them coming every week. I think it was every 2 weeks. We had what we call the wash ladies. It was usually 2 of them would come from colored town, and they spend all day there washing and hanging out those clothes. And they'd eat lunch there. Of course, when colored people back then, if the colored people were going to eat with you, they ate at a different table, maybe after we got through. They didn't eat with us. Wasn't that terrible? Well, anyway, for working all day like that, they probably got $1 a piece. I'm not sure about that, but I know it wasn't much, which was ridiculous. But they were probably glad to get a little cash. Of course, $1 went a whole lot further than it does now. Consider that. But can you imagine see, it'd be maybe 10 kids and Mom and Papa, and sometimes they'd have a colored lady that even lived there. We had a room upstairs we called the cook's room, that if they had somebody real good, that she'd help with Mama tending the children and all that, you know. And well, anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't know what year we ever got a washing machine, but we didn't write it. Papa was real good about anything came out new. He'd buy it and see whether it was something he wanted to sell or not. And if it was something he wanted to sell, then he'd buy the copyright for it and have them made, you know. But I don't think he ever had anything good, because there was a Polk bicycle and it was such a good brand. He thought, well, and I think it was just kind of a cross between a bicycle and something with a motor on it.
Well, I always heard that he had the first automobile in Cabarrus County.
Well, it'd be close to that.
And I also heard that it had a collision with the second automobile in the county at the square in Concord.
Well, I don't know if they must have told you that. I don't know about that.
All right. Some of B.L. Umberger's relatives from Virginia would come in the summer and stay for months at Luberger Place. What did you all do during these visits?
Well, see, we had so many different ages people, so our relatives would come, and maybe they're Nita's age, so they'd chum together, you see. And the same way with the boys. There were certain ones, I can't even remember their names, but every summer they'd come. And not only that, Ollie, our first cousin, who was a rural mail carrier, before he got married, he lived up there too. Ma had a house full of people all the time to have to cook for and all that. Well, see, all those sheets had to be washed too. And imagine those two women working all day, this and that and the other. And on hog killing day, boy, that kept everybody busy for 2 or 3 days, you know, making the soap and everything else, you know. There's some, I can't think of the name of it. It's not liver mush. Of course, they made liver mush. You see, that would last a long time. Back then, you didn't. Oh, about the ice. We didn't have refrigerators back then, but in the summertime, you had the ice man that came twice a week. Well, you had a refrigerator. Usually, they had it in back porch or something like that, or maybe in the kitchen, that you had to come in the back door and carrying that ice between, they had a certain instrument that carried that one. But then they finally fixed a place on the back porch, which was screened in, and it was a huge back porch. But they got a big refrigerator. We called it ice box then, I think we called it. But they fixed it, they backed it up to the outdoors where the iceman could back up there, and they cut a hole in the screen and all that, and fixed a door in the back of the refrigerator where he could come and back up there, put it right in that little box there, which was open, and then they closed that. Of course, from then on, you used the front of it.
Mm-hmm. I remember seeing that.
Well, now, see, Pap thinks of things like that. He just had a real mind. It was just a shame that he got in with the worst bunch up in Kannapolis that drank, and that just ruined him.
Welcome to hour 2 of the family history interview with Francis Fisher. Now it's August the 8th, 2002. So we're going to continue where we left off from tape 1. Sometimes you all would go up to Wytheville, Virginia to visit for a long time. What do you remember about those trips?
I remember it was quite an event. They had the Umberger reunion up there. I don't think it happened every year, but we usually went pretty often because those related families up there, they would come down and spend a lot of time with us too. The whole family come, and sometimes those girls, our first cousins, would come and stay months in the summertime. And well, anyway, when the Umberger reunion's going to be in somewhere in Wythe County, where Dad was born and raised. There are more Umbergers up there than you can shake a stick at. Some of them are spelled just a little bit different, like Umbergar or something like that. But they're all Umbergers related. I don't know how it got different like that. But we back then your cars weren't glassed in. They were all open, and you had curtains if it rained that you had to put up. and well, anyway, we had a 7-passenger car for the family, and we probably put more than 7 in there. I don't know about that, but they didn't have any gas station. And how we got gas, I just never have understood, because there weren't gas stations, and they weren't motels, and they weren't restrooms. So you'd go several hours, and somebody would say they had to go, so they'd stop the car when they could find nice woods on both sides of the highway, and the girls would go on one side and the boys would go on the other side. We'd meet back at the car and go along on our trip.
Well, so do you remember anything about the family reunion in Withville?
I don't remember one thing about that. I just remember going, and they told me that Papa, anything like that, Papa, he had such a beautiful voice that he would sing, and of course Mother would play the piano for him. But somebody told me that. I was little then, and all I remember is we stayed with different families up there. We had too many of us to stay at one place, so they divide up, and maybe the boys would stay at a certain place. Mama with the 2 youngest ones, we'd go with her, and I was the one that, I'm not going to tell them, Emma. Yeah. Well, I would be me and Edith were the smallest ones, and maybe Ruth, I don't know. But we'd usually stay at the Crouches. They weren't related, but they were good friends of ours, because Mrs. Crouch was one of our neighbors. And but Papa's sisters and family like that, I don't remember how we divided up, but that's when you traveled back then. And in the summertime, of course, the whole families would come down and stay with us. Of course, they'd stay in our house. I don't know whether they slept on the floor or what, but we did have a lot of beds. Our house was big rooms, so we had 2 double beds in about every bedroom, you know. And you still had room if you wanted to sleep on the floor. Did I tell about there weren't many bridges across the smaller streams, so there weren't any bridges, so you had to ford. We call it fording the stream, where our wheels were high then, so you could ford them without any trouble, up on the mountains even. Now, a lot of the roads on the mountains were single. If you met a car, you had to back up until you found a little cove where one of them could park and the other one could pass. And then I don't know about the highway, whether that was hard service or what, but I know most of the roads around my mother's house, it was just red dirt, and when it was real dry, man, somebody go in front of you, you couldn't see hardly where to go. There's so much dust.
I've heard that going on a trip like to Withville, that you might have several flat tires on the way.
That's right. You had tubes. You had tubes in the tires, and if a nail got in there, of course that punctured it. But you had equipment to patch it that you went with it. Yeah, so you'd have to take it off and patch that hole in the tube and put it back in there.
Now, if it took more than one day and they didn't have motels, where'd you spend the night?
We never did go anywhere that would do with the whole family that we would have to spend the night on the way.
Okay. I've heard that when you were little that gypsies were around and that they would come up to the house and ask for shelter or food or whatever. Was that right?
No, that was tramps that did that.
Tramps, okay.
But we did have gypsies that would, about once a year, on a certain place between our house and the school, that they would camp for some time. And when we walked to school, we had to pass that. We were scared of them.
Why?
Well, we thought they'd kidnap us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Did they? you didn't know them. You didn't
No,
know
you didn't
anything
know
about
them. They probably did that way all around the world, you know. And they're staying 1 week in a tent or something like that.
Well, what did you do if a tramp came to the house?
Well, my mother was so soft-hearted. She was so soft-hearted, and if a tramp came and asked for food, she would always fix them up something. It wasn't mealtime or anything else. Of course, she didn't let them in the house. Now, she got it ready, and they'd sit out on the steps and eat that.
Now, when B.L. Umberger, he was involved in so many things. One of them was the founding of Mount Olivet Church, or the building of the building.
He did not found it because it's an old church. But in 1915, they built a brick one where I suppose it was logged before. I don't know. But in the same spot, which was close to our home. But when they wanted to build it, they divided the cost up in six parts. Now, and Papa had one of those 6, and I think the Barnharts had one of those 6, and maybe the Goodwins had one of those 6, and the Scotts could have, but I don't know. But there was probably 2 of those 6 that everybody wanted to put a little bit in to get it in the church. But my daddy paid 1/6 of that building. Of course, now it's been added to all sorts of ways since then. But that was the original, and they got it in the year I was born, 1915.
And you said that back when you were little that the church had outhouses, and I guess you had outhouses at home, but what was that like?
Yeah, that was right. That was right. Between Sunday school and church, all the ladies went down a certain path to an outhouse, and you kind of gossiped during that time. I don't remember how many seats was inside of there, but we kept it busy that 15 minutes or whatever it was between Sunday school and church. About everybody went down there.
Did you have outhouse at home when you were little?
Yes, we had it, but all my life we had running water and had a bathroom and all that. But we always kept what they call a back house. And if we were hiring people to help us, especially colored, well, that's what they used. They never went in our bathroom, you see.
I think that B.L. Umberger helped found other groups in the community like the Boy Scouts, and he brought in rural electrification.
That's right. He was the first scoutmaster in the county, and he bought equipment from World War I, tents and leggings and I don't know, all that kind of stuff that they used in when they went on trips. Now, the Barnhart boys and the Weinkauf boys, let's see, I'm trying to think. Anyway, there was quite a bunch of those boys that Papa was, and he took them on camping trips. I don't know how often. But see, it'd be Pap and Wiley and Roy. Now, Roy was the little one then, and Roy was always stubborn as the dickens, and he didn't want to listen to Papa. So Wiley was telling me this. Of course, I wasn't there. But he said Roy would always act up when they were going to go on, you know, out somewhere from the tent, and Papa'd make him stay there, and one of the boys would have to stay with him, too.
And ruin it for him.
Yeah, I run it for him, because that other guy couldn't go, you know, so, what else was you asking?
Well, like rural electrification.
Yes, we didn't have electricity. We had gas. They call it natural gas. I think they made the gas from burning coal. I'm not sure. But we had cooked on it, and we had our lights lights was from that, and well, anyway, when you cooked on it, it made the pots black. This made a lot of soot came out with it, you see, but it's been purified since, you see. But I remember maybe 2 or 3 times a year, we take all those pots out in the road where there's a lot of sand, and we'll work on them to get that black off.
Wow.
And there was something else.
When I was little, I remember going up in the attic at grandmother's house and finding the gas light fixtures that had been pulled up through the ceilings when they put the electric wires in. When was that?
Well, I don't know when it was, but I remember them lighting the gas lights. They had a kind of they call it a pilot in there, and we had a long metal thing that had a flame on it. You had to light those from the that's on the ceilings. So I remember when you got electricity, and all you had to do was to snap that button. There's quite a difference.
Was that gas dangerous when you lit those lights? You had to be real careful? You had to turn it on like you're lighting
not
a
really, but
stove?
anytime you're using gas, you got to be careful. I just don't remember us ever getting it in the house or any trouble there. But I was telling you about when my dad had a big hand in bringing electricity to what we call the line called community then. And he and Barnhart's owned that company, and the Barnharts did more of the manual, you know, going around and checking on each month and all that than Papa. But eventually Duke Power came in, they sold it to Duke Power.
Okay. So that was back in the 20s or in the teens, right?
Well, see, I was born in 1915, so and I can remember it now, but I don't have any idea what year that was. I know it wasn't very big.
Do you remember anything else that B.L. Umberger was the founder of?
No, but he always kept his eye open for new things. If something new came out and he thought he could be able to make a living with it or sell it and make money, then he would investigate, and if he could buy the copyright, then that would be his to develop the way he wanted to.
Now, you mentioned about his beautiful voice. Now, Jennie Belle played the piano and he'd sing, and they'd go, and they were popular that way, weren't they?
Well, that was back when there was no radio, no, anyway, just wasn't anything except your talent, local talent, right. You see. So, that was before my day too, see, so all I know is what I've heard from other people.
Well, he was still alive when you were born, but he wasn't doing that then?
Oh, yeah, he was. He was working all that time.
Okay.
He didn't get incapacitated till I think I was 12 years old when he died, but he had been sick and at home for maybe 2 years before that, but he was active before that in his business. He just got to where his mind wasn't right, and he was paying a lot of money to have the boss of something, and it didn't turn out right. I remember one that it lost a lot of money on. $10,000 back then was $100,000 today, you see. And he bought the copyright to a folding bed, like a, what do you call these now?
Trundle bed or rollaway?
Well, yeah, the one that you would fold out. It was a lot of metal. I don't know what happened, but he lost all that money. And maybe made some other bad. Then the Depression came along, and Wiley had finished college and he was supposed to take care of, see, Papa had I don't know how many farms and Mama had I don't know how many farms, but Wiley was supposed to take care of all the farms and manage them. And so when he got out of college, Papa had him to buy all this new farming equipment, like just anybody didn't have a tractor back then, tractors and stuff like that. Well, that was borrowed on Wiley's name. Well, when the Depression came along, and golly, you couldn't make any money. King can tell you how much a pound of cotton sold for, it was almost nothing. Well, they had all these tenants they were responsible for, and you when you have a farm tenant, they don't have income coming every month or anything like that. Usually it's just once a year, you know. And so he'd have to sign at the grocery store for them to get there and stuff like that.
So all that stuff bought on credit didn't work out after a while?
Well, then the Depression came along and they couldn't make the payments, you see. And so they lost one whole farm. I guess they put it all together and chose which one they wanted to lose and so forth, because and back then the taxes, all the school taxes was on people that owned land. And there was a creek that Cannon Mills had ruined that had to be dredged. Well, that creek ran through a lot of Mama's land, and they had to pay for that too, you see.